Good morning. This is Ken Long from Tortoise Capital with the daily debriefing for May 11th, 2016. Sonal is taking a look at the journey of the Z2, and so postulating a short position here from the open and tracking a Z2 trailing stop. And notice when the Z2 comes down to the RL270, we have a decision point, a critical state, where the market's either going to fail after 7 shots at failing further, and it hasn't, or it's going to recover and then come back to the RL270 and the close, or it's going to just muck around and continue to go sideways and develop into a sideways quiet channel. My opinion on this one is I would strike and take the just take the win. It's had 7 chances to fail further and it hasn't. It's coming back into the river and the new normal, and so the opportunities to fail are over. And I know how to re-enter if it violates the swing low, say below the dotted line. So I would rather cash it here than waiting for a PSAR or a Bollinger Band mean or near side of the river, in which case this entire excursion turns into into dead money, and that will just drain me emotionally. What I would say is if you get this entry here, that you have an excursion down to Z3 that then reverses. So getting a short in here and cover in there, why not? This one is a terrific RLXD dragon continuation. So you have a dragon with a gain as reflected in the gap. So I treat that as one leg up. A pullback, and instead of failing back to close the gap, it takes off. You get an RLXD. Sonal nails this entry. Nice job holding through here. I know how hard that is for you. And then she gets the RLCO event here and cashes with a really nice position. Well done. Here's one from Ashay asking about how to frame these trades in here between the yellow circles and XME so we can start trading from Z1 to Z1. There's just not enough room in there to trade. I mean, you're talking about from 2206 down to 21.7. That's only 35 cents. You're not going to get 2 to 1 and a reasonable stop in there. When the 30 is inside the river, there's no edge. These are the unambiguous moves, the opportunities when you get an RLCO outside the river. That means the 30 is outside the river. So this becomes a really nice pocket trade and a cover. And then at the end, then that becomes an owl entry, and you have some opportunities in here. And this one is probably the only one I can justify inside this river because you have a P4 where you have a higher low in the dragon and you're playing that as a pocket continuation on this successful trade. I can see that one. I could see trying a pocket short inside of here with the idea being that it's going to violate below this. But by this second green candle, you got to be covering, because if this thing's going to fail, what you're really betting is it's going to fail through the belly of the dragon. And so failure to fail further here tells you you got to be getting out right about here, and then you get a fractional win, so you didn't lose any money. It just didn't follow through. But generally speaking, when you're this tight inside here, the only trade you have is an opportunity when you get the Z3 pinch here, and then you can start playing the breakout. You can actually play that as a breakout, then a reverse, and right here you have an owl entry, and if you're using the Z2, you get this move from 2210 down here to 2188 in a afternoon nice a slide past the VWAP right here. So generally speaking, the earlier trades with the bigger oscillations when price and the 10 and the 30 are getting outside the river, that's reasonable. Trying to don't try so hard to train inside here. If you had a successful owl, then you can play a pocket. But if the pocket doesn't follow through and get you an R, then you're into this crocodile river chop, and there's no edge inside here. Here's a couple in the DAX. This is marginally a P1, right on the edge of the river, but I can see it. You got a morning hook and an entry and a nice scratch. That's a very good scratch. This right here is a dragon collapsing. So you have 1, 2, 3, and then a violation below here. You're short in this little, it looks like a little pocket entry with a stop above that swing high. You might be able to squeeze an R out of that if you treat that as a Z3 excursion, and then you cash it right about here. So there's an opportunity. By the same token, this is a very nice pocket trade here because you have an owl in here somewhere and a higher low. The dragon is turning up. The 30 is rolled up. Nice entry, nice exit. Well done. Looking at tomorrow's trade while we're there, we're about 3% off the swing high. The follow through didn't happen. It was a gap, a slight gap down, and slid all the way into the afternoon, right at the Bollinger Band mean, right in the middle of the 10 period and 30 period channels. I think it's more like chop. I really just want to see it hold above 203. If it gets below 203, then it gets very dicey. But this was an opportunity to gain. It just didn't materialize. This was me this morning in XME. I had set up a hybrid frog. Didn't quite get the entry. It became a owl trade. There's the pocket. So unambiguous move. RLCO outside the river. RL10 crosses the dragon. Dragon is rolling over. The 30 is rolled over. Short. Here's the 30. 30 is rolled over. Short here. I'm using just north of the RL10 and the PSAR. It fails. I'm just tracking the 30. When the 30 dives deep, I just pick up the edge of the dragon and then strike down here for 2R. Notice it just, I felt, the first time I felt good in this trade was when it broke through the RL270 without fighting. Then I'm thinking, yeah, it's going to come down and test yesterday's close, which it did. Just notice the confluence of crossovers after that first excursion. Now, if you're watching the Bollinger Band mean right here, the middle of the river, you got the price and the 10 and the 30, and the dragon has rolled over, the VWAP has rolled over, everything pointing to down. If I was a better trader, I might have gotten a second position in right here on the 2R battle drill. I had a couple other positions. It was a span of control issue. But that's a nice 2R. That then in XME turns into this owl. So there's the unambiguous move. We just got 2R out of the ROCO outside the river. Notice the dragon had come out of the river altogether. Hard for it to maintain that. So this is sort of normal sideways choppy behavior. I treat this as the RLCO. RL10 crosses the dragon. The dragon is sloping up. The 30 is sloping up. So I'm long. Pick your exit. Do you want to use the 10 or the 30 as the low? I would typically use this as the execution stop, and this is my position sizing stop. I'm looking to get to the 270, then to the VWAP. If that works, then I'll frame this up here around 2218 with the hump of the dragon. If it gets above that, then we're free and clear. This is me with EWZ, hybrid frog entry short, and this is just a little bit in front of what would have been a nice pocket and an owl trade. I would treat this as the unambiguous move up during the gap. I get this pocket short and off we go. but this was basically a hybrid frog. My stop is above the RL10. As it rolls over and starts failing out of the dragon again, I'm tightening up my stop to the 30. And then I pick up the edge of the dragon. That feels natural. Failure to fail further. Uh, Exit as the RLXD occurs. And now, as soon as the 30 starts to roll up, we get an owl entry. When the 30 crosses the Bollinger Band mean, I usually take that as a good sign. And then shortly thereafter, I move from the Z2 stop up to the, I wanted to lock in no lose plus dinner for 2 here, and then see what it's going to do. But I'm still hoping for it to get to here. Would love to see it get back up into that zone. Meanwhile, the XME Dragon, the entry here, I have a second position going in here on an improvement in the market. The 30 is strong, the 10 is strong, and then off we go. Right around here, XIV was starting to make a strong move too, and I was exceeding my span of control, and so I cashed those 2 positions here because I really wanted to work XIV, because that's well postured for an explosive move. XME is tied to the world of real things, and I've gotten at least half of this back, and I'm just above the VWAP, a natural place for this to falter. So I cashed those 2. This was the the XIV trade that was happening. Entered the owl entry about the same time as I did an XME. It starts really taking off after it crosses the VWAP, and so this is actually stronger because it didn't fall as far, and the failure was not as steep, and so I'm quicker to get my second position in when the Z3 starts to expand. It just runs away up in here, and as it starts to roll over, I just take a money management exit, and I'm happy to pocket that. That's about 3R. This is at EWZ. The owl reversion to the mean trade. We had gotten this one on a hybrid frog, and got the owl pocket entry using the Z2, trading up to the Z1, up to the Bollinger Band mean, up to the southern skin of the dragon, then just strike as this thing unfolds in our direction. This was a sketch that's trying to help us visualize the problem with the Crocodile River. All right, so I want you to see this as a 3-dimensional look downstream of the Crocodile River, but I also want you to see it as a histogram with fat tails. We get paid by trading out here in the fat tails. We get chewed up by crocodiles in the middle of Crocodile River. That's why when you look at the condition of the 30 with respect to the river. So there's really like 3 conditions. In the normal chop, there's no trend, but it's not quiet. I would characterize this as noise. And that is, you have maybe some kind of sideways choppy action, and this could be a slightly up or slightly down, but you've got the Bollinger Band mean right here in the middle, and you've got the RL10 and the price in the 30 all just swirling around inside the river, and it hasn't pinched to a condition where it's less than a frog box. So you have normal noise. It's noisy. So don't try so hard to make trades work in this region. Don't try to find reasons to trade. The crocodiles will eat you up, man. This is a normal condition. Haven't done the math yet, but my intuition tells me about 2/3 of the time it looks like this. The areas where we have the fat tail trading opportunities, first, over here in the land of unambiguous moves, where trending behavior is occurring, and I characterize that as signal, that it has a directional bias. There's no signal in here. This is all noise. This is very high signal. And so you have the sideways chop, and then it breaks out, and the Z3s start expanding. You have price, and then the RL10 leave the river. And when the RL30 leaves the river, that is the definition that we use for the beginning of trending behavior. When the RL30 clears the river, then off we go. That's by that time you want to be in that trade. So this would be a typically an SQC, where we buy the departure from the river with the RL10, maybe take the far side of the river as the initial stop, or maybe the Z2, depending what your risk tolerance is. The important point here is the definition of the beginning of trending behavior. The river is clear. There's nothing in there. Price, the 30, and the 10 are all outside of the river. This is an abnormal condition. So you've got to pay attention to it while it occurs. It's going to try to get back to normal by having the price revert to the new Bollinger Band mean and bring everything back inside the river and then chop around and then transition back into this normal state where everything's inside the river and it's more or less sideways, just chopping around. So in this segment, on this left-hand side of the trend, this is abnormal. It's unusually trending, unambiguous trends. So the kinds of trades you get over here are, first, a trade continuation where you get the SQC starting maybe, or you get the pattern 5, or maybe a hybrid frog move. But as it's leaving the river and creating that unambiguous move, you may be in it. Or it pauses and the price comes back to the dragon and then resumes its fail. It's like dragon collapsing, or P1F, and you're buying the trend continuation with pocket trades until they stop. When the first pocket trade continuation fails, that's enough of a signal to tell you that the transition back into this normal chop is occurring. Or the other trade that comes out of here is that when you get that unambiguous move and then it has failed to fail further and it starts to get sideways and start to work its way up, that gives you those signals, those 5 signals for the owl pattern: the unambiguous move, the RLCO outside the river, RL10 crosses the dragon, the 30 and the dragon both pointing up, and then you can get your entry. So we're still in the fat left tail over here with the land of unambiguous moves, and that trending behavior is now a reversion to the mean, and it's a long way to go from the fat tail into the middle of the river, and so you have an advantage by trading in the region. The trade begins out here in the land of unambiguous moves. Well, once it transitions, a pocket trade fails, and now it's getting this sideways choppiness, but it's still noisy. No trades. And then at some point, the volatility may quiet down, say around lunchtime, to the point where the Z3 lines have pinched, so the volatility is decreasing, and now it's quiet, too quiet, and the Z3 lines have pinched inside the frog box, and now you're ready for a bracket trade to trade in either direction upon an excursion. The longer it lasts in that condition, I think the bigger the move will be, because it's like pressure. The compression of volatility is building up pressure for it to move, and when it does, the cork pops out of the bottle, goes boom, off it goes. And so this is also an abnormal condition. It's abnormally quiet. It can't stay that way forever. And what's happening in this little sideways chop and in this Z3, the dragon is kind of swimming from side to side. He's immune to crocodiles, but he stays in the river. And so watch for the conditions of the dragon, because it may suggest to you which way pressure is building in terms of which direction the breakout is likely to occur. Because that pinch is so tight, you can buy the breakout from Z3 with an initial stop on the far side of the Z3, and then you can still play a stop and reverse if it doesn't work. And let's see some of the details for Z3PO and Z3PC. So just recognize that when it's very, very quiet, the dragon's going to be swimming from side to side. The crocodiles are still lurking in the middle. And the only trade you can make in there are really the breakout trades, like the P5, which is SQC, or the Z3PO, or the Z3PC. That's the visual I'm trying to get. I don't want you to trying to be aggressive to find reasons to trade while it's in here. You'll talk yourself into getting chopped up inside Crocodile River. Concentrate on those patterns and the abnormal conditions. They're easier to see. They resolve themselves more quickly in order to get back into the normal condition. And so you want to strike while the iron is hot. Know when we're in abnormal conditions and trade accordingly.